You're listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, the place to learn about new technology and technological advances before they become mainstream. This podcast is sponsored by Ingram Micro's Imagine Next. It's not about the destination. It's about going someplace you never thought possible. Go to imaginenext.ingrammicro.com to find out more. Let's get into it.
Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Carrie Roberts, and my guest today is Matt Johnson, the Global Offering Manager of VMware on IBM Cloud. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, Carrie. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start off with a little bit about you. You are one of the youngest upper managers at IBM, and you've been able to travel the world with this position. You also speak 3 languages, and while you were in school, you actually did a variety of co-ops at different companies. What is it that you enjoy most about IBM?
Well, as a product manager at IBM, I really enjoy the fact, and especially early in my career, I really enjoy the fact that I have a lot of autonomy to come up with some really, really cool solutions that really focus on our customer pain points. And I have a lot of freedom to come up with some things that might be not conventional and some things that might be conventional. And it affords me a lot of flexibility and direct customer interaction too. So I can really put my product manager skills to use.
And today we are chatting about migrating and modernizing workloads on IBM Cloud with VMware. And Matt, I'd love to talk about the industry overall first. Why are you seeing so many customers that have a VMware footprint move to the public cloud? And what are some of the concerns financially and technically that these customers seem to be having?
Well, what we've seen in the market over the past 4 years is a lot of enterprise, or it can even be a small business, their capital expenditure budget for any IT expenditure is getting slashed in half or totally blown away altogether. So any VMware shop out there, any IT shop that needs to expand because they have capacity needs, because they're a growing business, they're seeing financial hurdles. Anytime they buy or procure a new server, x86 server, whatever it may be, expanding their on-premise footprint. So there's this dire need to get out of the business of owning a data center and to adopt the principles that is the public cloud. But you have that, and you have the public clouds that exist today, like on AWS and Azure, and you think about the applications that customers have running on the VMware hypervisor today. They can't just simply lift and shift to any public cloud instance. There has to be some level of refactoring and replatforming done to that application to make it work on a traditional public cloud. So now there's this, for the past 4 years, we've seen this huge need for a really clean lift and shift of VMware workloads from on-premise into the cloud without having to change anything about the application itself. So that's really where this solution fits into the cloud market right now. We are exactly that landing zone for those customers that have they're traditionally tooled against VMware. They have applications running on the VMware hypervisor. They need to quickly get out of their data center because of those financial constraints, and they need to make some tactical moves into the cloud within the next 2 years. And that's exactly the problem we're solving.
And you had mentioned that customers are moving from a traditional data center to the cloud. How are they doing that? And is there a way that they can customize it for their needs?
So the name of the game when it comes to making that tactical shift from the on-premise data center to the cloud as it pertains to VMware workloads, which is the dominant hypervisor in the market today. I think VMware has an 80% market share. So almost every client, any customer that's been around has had any semblance of an IT operation for the past 10 years. They likely have VMware operating in their data center today. And the name of the game is, how do we do it in the least invasive way possible, down to the actual operations and how the customer procures infrastructure, controls, who has access to what, at the infrastructure layer, at the virtualization layer. And what you'll see at other public clouds is just too much abstraction from the actual hardware that the customers are rehosting their applications on. They can't, with a certain degree of confidence, know where exactly their applications are running. And you might be in the financial services space, the healthcare space, or you're just a company with some very strict security policies. And you want to be able to tell and attest to the hardware that you're running on. You want to have certain controls over the networking in the cloud that you're running in. What we've been able to do on the IBM Cloud is to offer that level of flexibility down to the actual physical infrastructure that allows for the least invasive adoption of a public cloud platform. Our automation in our bare metal service will do a lot of the heavy lifting, configuring and installing of software and VMware software on top of VMware certified infrastructure. But after our automation is complete, control over the entire stack is handed over to the customer. So they can bring all their existing operations, their security framework, anything that they've been doing on premise and into the cloud. So it's not just the lift and shift of the actual workload itself, it's the lift and shift of the entire operations around the workload that make this a really easy and customizable solution.
Now, you had mentioned that a lot of people are already using VMware, but if you're using another cloud solution, how can you transfer over to IBM and VMware, and what's the benefit to making that transfer?
IBM's motto for the past 4 years here has been multi-cloud, multi-cloud, multi-cloud. So we have had that ingrained in the DNA of the solution from the get-go. Luckily, in the space that we're in, VMware on cloud, the VMware hypervisor is the great equalizer between all the clouds. If you're running VMware on any other cloud, in a private cloud, in a major cloud provider like AWS or Azure, they all have their own VMware solutions out there that are offered in different flavors. But nonetheless, if you have an application that runs on the VMware hypervisor, it runs in a different cloud, it can run on the IBM Cloud. So long as you have that VMware vSphere-based hypervisor, you can run it in the IBM Cloud, no matter where it might be running originally.
Now, for those that need a little bit more context into what we're talking about, what is IBM Cloud for VMware Solutions in its simplest terms, and how does it tie into everything you've talked about so far?
So the IBM Cloud for VMware Solutions platform it's the VMware software-defined data center stack. So that's VMware vSphere, virtualized compute, VMware NSX, which is VMware's virtualized networking platform, VMware vSAN, VMware's storage virtualization platform. So all the different components of a data center, compute, network, storage are virtualized and defined by VMware software. And it's this VMware validated software stack running on top of IBM Cloud bare metal servers. And with the combination of all that technology allows us to connect and extend any customer VMware footprint into the IBM Cloud without changing anything about the application and allowing for that clean lift and shift.
And how is it different from the massive cloud market?
So there's all those other public cloud solutions like EC2 or Azure's public cloud offerings, and even IBM Cloud has some very public cloud solutions on multi-tenant platforms. The difference between those and what this is that this is VMware based. So it is infrastructure running on VMware software, and the infrastructure is single tenant as well. So there's no multi-tenancy happening here. You don't have any noisy neighbors. You have dedicated servers being dedicated to you. And this is a solution that you'll see in other clouds that's growing as well. And AWS has a solution today called VMware Cloud on AWS. Azure has a solution called Azure VMware Solutions. And Google also has a solution called Google VMware Solutions. And all of them have that same basic ingredients, which is that VMware stack running on top of IBM Cloud, not IBM Cloud, just any single tenant bare metal servers. So that's the niche market that we're in with this VMware play.
And American Airlines has been using IBM Cloud for quite some time. Can you share with us a little bit more how it's helped their business over the years, and especially in the last few months?
Sure, yeah. So we came to market in 2016, and American Airlines was one of the earliest adopters of our platform. What they did was basically the exact playbook that I ran through. They had a dire need to get out of the data center they were operating in Dallas. They lifted and shifted a sizable chunk of their VMware estate onto our platform and immediately started seeing the economic benefits of just lifting and shifting their operations. But a lot of customers, after lifting and shifting, they expect a lot more out of the cloud. And that's exactly what we positioned as the right solution for American Airlines here was, get the tactical benefits of lifting and shifting your applications today. Usually we see, in this case, American Airlines saved over a 3-year time frame 40% on all IT ops related costs, labor, and infrastructure savings that they otherwise would have had to spend on premise if they had continued to operate the same way. But then over time, over that 3-year span, they began to take a look at the actual applications themselves. And they started to, in one particular case, they had a rebooking tool that they had migrated to the cloud. It was a tool that generally was used to help customers rebook their flights in case of emergencies or weather. And the tool was pretty clunky just in its state before it moved to the cloud. But then using IBM Cloud services and our catalog of services as well, they were able to not only just containerize the platform and convert it into a microservices architecture with, while also doing this in totally an OpEx fashion without having to do all the installation and the adoption of these services on premise. This is all automated and easy to consume in the cloud. They were able to really enhance the end user experience of that rebooking tool to plug in some Watson weather services and features that helped customers determine whether or not they would have to rebook their flight because of incoming weather, and it really drove adoption of the service, and they were able to get all these new features and functions to market much quicker. And in the case of these new COVID times that we're in, the name of the game for adjusting for these unforeseen circumstances is being able to scale back as needed. So in the case of American Airlines, they were able to really roll back their consumption of infrastructure because clearly not that many people are traveling right now. So, if it was the other way around and they had made some sizable investments in their data center, 3 years ago, they'd be stuck with all that hardware right now, and it'd just be driving more cost and ultimately would lead to some other financial decisions that they would have had to make. But due to the elasticity and the scalability of the cloud, they were able to really adapt to capacity needs on the fly. And meanwhile, couple that with the actual modernization of the application that they were able to execute with that scalability of the cloud, they're in a way better place right now than they would have been if they had not modernized or lifted and shifted and then modernized.
Now, IBM also helps the small business vertical as well. We spoke with Pablo Ferretti at IBM recently on this show, and he mentioned how IBM Cloud is helping small businesses in a big way. Can you share with us maybe a small business example and how they have benefited from IBM Cloud as well?
Yeah, a really good example that I like to refer to is this company out of Switzerland called Active Trades. They are a financial services company. They handle a lot of different trading platforms out there. And they were in a similar predicament to American Airlines, of course, at a smaller scale because they are just a more medium-sized business. But they needed to really get out of the business of owning a data center just because it was a major cost leader for them on their balance sheet, and they were under some tight budgets that they needed to accommodate for. So they were able to quickly, with the version of the VMware stack that they were running on premise, we were able to lift and shift them out of that existing data center into a European IBM Cloud data center. And they were able to, as especially as a financial services institution, they were able to take all the security framework that they had been operating on premise, all the operations around it, all the compliance auditing, all the vulnerability assessment, all the different security ops around their trading platforms that they were migrating to the cloud. They were able to take all of that and take it into the cloud without having to change or alter anything about that. So, when it came to getting past the CISO office and or the IT sec department that they had in-house, we were able to get past that sniff test and establish this approved platform on a public cloud solution, which is very hard to do with any other type of public cloud offerings out there. So, in terms of a smaller scale lift and shift, but meeting those very niche needs that of a financial services institution, the solution was able to really hit the nail on the head and do it in a way that the cost savings were just as impactful for them as it was for American Airlines, even at a smaller scale.
Now, when you think of technology as a whole, whether you're thinking of the cloud or everything in general, where do you personally see technology going within the next year?
I think the name of the game is having consistency in management, because we're going to see that there will be a lot of applications out there in the enterprise space or even in the small business space that are old but so critical to the business, and the business runs on them today. And it might make sense to modernize those applications. So you're going to have some modernized apps out there. And then you're going to also have net new applications that are going to be built from scratch in these cloud native architectures in a microservices architecture. And then you're going to have just old applications that are important, but not important enough to modernize. So they're going to stay as legacy, traditional 3-tier applications. So I think the name of the game going forward for any cloud provider out there is to provide some common management plane across the old, the modernized, and the new. And that's kind of the future that we're building towards here. We recently acquired Red Hat last year. Red Hat owns this container development platform called OpenShift, and IBM is really converging on OpenShift as this multi-cloud common management across all these different on-premise, hybrid cloud environments, other cloud environments. And we're also taking part of that as the VMware offering. We actually have a formalized offering around running OpenShift on VMware in the cloud, because VMware and a lot of customers that are tooled and skilled against VMware is this really reliable hypervisor, this really reliable virtualization platform that can do a great job at managing the old, managing the modernized, and even managing net new Kubernetes clusters or OpenShift clusters for that matter. So I think it's going to be really important to have one reliable management plane across all these different applications, and at the IaaS layer, at the virtualization layer. And I believe VMware can play a huge part in that. So I really think that the future will be accommodating for the old, the modernized, and the new. And I think that's the future that we're building towards in this offering.
If people want to learn more about what we talked about, or they want to connect with you or ask questions, where is the best place to do that?
So my LinkedIn information is going to be shared here. So you can click on that link and that'll take you to my page. Feel free to connect with me there. I'm happy to answer any questions, hop on the phone, whatever it is. And then there's also our ibm.com/cloud/VMware page. That'll take you to our getting started page. From there, you'll find a bunch of materials, documentation, trials, demos, and it'll actually take you to the order page, the cloud.ibm.com console, where you can actually order all these solutions that I just discussed today.
And if you are a partner with Ingram, you can contact Don Oman at donald.oman@ingrammicro.com, and his information will be in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Matt, for sharing your knowledge and passion with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
If you like this episode or have a question, join the discussion on Twitter at Ingram TechSoul with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, hosted by Carrie Roberts. This episode was sponsored by Ingram Micro's Imagine Next. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production with Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. Ingram Micro production handled by Laura Burton and Christine Fan. To not miss an episode, subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform.